Welcome back to Blueprint for Wealth with my special guest, Lew Parker. Welcome to the show, Lew.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Lew Parker is a Renaissance man. He speaks many languages, but French is his most proficient outside of English, and he's also a techpreneur. So, Lew, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your experience in technology as an entrepreneur and a little bit of your background. Where did you start doing technology, and when did you start it, and how did you come about being an entrepreneur in the first place?
Well, I kind of migrated into it after I was involved in technology running Hazleton Laboratories. We were doing laboratory work for the NIH. We sold Hazleton, and I came out, and my alternatives were to move somewhere I didn't want to move or to take some technology and start myself. So I chose the latter.
Okay. What kind of technology were you doing?
We actually took, with the permission of Corning, who had bought Hazleton, we took technology on veterinary diagnostics and started a company to provide high-speed diagnostics for the dairy industry. Developed two assays, one for the diagnosis of Staph aureus in milk, which was a big problem for the dairy industry, actually a larger stream of milk samples than human blood samples.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I would say you were a scientist, or you are a scientist.
I was working with a scientist organization to do it. And then we also developed a rapid assay for antibiotics in milk because sick cows are frequently treated with antibiotics.
I see.
So, and then if you get too much in the milk, you have to throw the milk away. So we started a company for that, and it didn't work very well. The science was not spot on, and so we sold that company out, and then I came later on and started, I went to work for a company in the human medical field, Kirshner Medical.
Okay.
And we were doing human orthopedics.
Okay.
And
so that's a big shift.
I went from science of chemistry and biology
to spine stuff.
Well, actually, yeah, spine, but also mostly hips, knees, and shoulders.
Okay.
We were replacing human hips, knees, and shoulders. And then we sold that company, and I had again the choice to go somewhere I didn't want to go, and came back to Loudoun County and figured, okay, I'll just make my life doing my winery. I had established a winery in '79, many years ago, the first in Loudoun County, one of the first in the back when the Extension Service and the USDA told me I was crazy to try to grow commercial grapes in Virginia.
I'd like to focus on that because I think that is probably not the source of your wealth today, but it's the source of your love and your passion, and you're really good at it. Willowcroft Winery is the oldest winery in Northern Virginia, isn't it?
In Loudoun County.
Loudoun County.
And one of the oldest in the state. I think we're currently the fifth oldest in the state of Virginia. Now there's about 300.
It's amazing.
And there's 50 in Loudoun County alone. So we were the pioneers for the industry. And
when did you start it?
We actually bought a farm in '79 out in Loudoun County, southwest of Leesburg, for my daughters who were 4-H kids. And we wanted a farm so the daughters could raise 4-H animals. And it was a small, high, rocky farm, and I'm saying there's no way you can farm for profit, but I have to have a high-value crop. And people were beginning to talk about the possibility of growing European wine grapes in the eastern United States. And
so what grapes do you grow?
We grow 12 varieties. Most of them are European Vitis vinifera varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Chardonnay, all those European grapes that are acknowledged to make the finest wines are European Vitis vinifera.
Okay.
And people were just saying it might be possible then, and so we gave it a try.
And you've won a bunch of awards over the years.
We're well over 400 or 500 medals, and we have the double gold from the San Francisco Chronicle competition this last year for one of our wines.
This past year?
So we've learned how to do it.
Wow, that's incredible.
We've learned how to.
I've been to the winery, and I suggest that all of our listeners go visit you before you decide not to do it anymore. It's a great winery. Lew produces great wine at Willowcroft. And if any of you are interested in learning about winemaking and really the ins and outs of it, particularly in Loudoun County, you should go visit them at Willowcroft. Now, I've also been involved with many other startups, and I know that you have too, and one startup in particular, probably the most successful that I'm aware of, was K2. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in startups and then a little bit about the K2 experience?
We started, when I got back here to Loudoun County from Kirshner Medical, my son-in-law, who's an entrepreneur genetically, wanted to start a company in the human spine business. And he had a surgeon that had the idea, and he said, how do I do this? So I joined him and started a company for treating human spines.
What do they do? I mean, what did they do?
That company was before K2.
Okay.
It was called American Osteomedics, and we were using percutaneous through the skin trocars to put human bone cement into the middle of your vertebral body. It was an enormously successful technology for women, for example, that have osteoporosis.
Calcium deficiencies and osteoporosis.
Their vertebral bodies were just collapsing, causing terrible pain, but we were able to fix that. And we sold that company within 3 years, and then he wanted to start again, so we started again with another company, which we called K2M.
And whatever happened to K2M?
K2M went from a little company with a few of us founders were involved, not only ourselves, but spine surgeons. We had the retired chief spine surgeon from Hopkins as our chief medical officer, and we put together a portfolio to handle specifically dramatically deformed spines, spinal curvature, and we became the leader in that area of spine. Scoliosis and related spine problems.
Sure.
And went on to sell the company and
do quite well.
We did well with that. Then we went to the company we sold it to. They took it public, and then the public company was sold to Stryker a couple of years ago for a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. What are the challenges that listeners should be aware of that entrepreneurs face when they're starting up a business? In other words, what is the greatest challenge that you've faced?
You have to have a person that understands the market first. I think the most critical thing for starting a company is to understand the market. And even with that, there's a lot of risk, of course. There's technical risk with a lot of startups. So we had a big technical risk for our spine company, and we're able to overcome it. And you have to be able to provide the leadership that knows how to commercialize technology. You see a lot of people that have very, very strong technical ideas, but crossing that bridge to commercialization is a different set of skills.
And what would you say the keys to success are for an entrepreneur to cross that bridge?
Getting the right people is the key to success in almost any enterprise. Getting the right people on the bus and getting them in the right seats.
Taking a page out of the Good to Great book from Jim Collins, he says that get the right people in the right seats. So K2M was a massive success, and you had a lot of other successes, but were there some failures too?
Well, as I told you, the ProScience Corporation that did the veterinary diagnostics, that was not successful.
Why? What caused it to be unsuccessful?
It had to do with, at that time, and this is many years ago, for example, we're into, and everybody in the United States understands today because of the pandemic, the difference between antigen testing and antibody testing.
Okay.
And the test we were
For the listener who doesn't understand, what's the difference?
Well, the antibodies are secreted by the human immune system as defense against the antigen.
Okay.
And we were using or tried to commercialize at that time an antibody test, and it wasn't adequately diagnosing the cow's milk for the presence of the antigen.
So the technology didn't work in that particular case. I actually had a failure in the startup that I worked in many, many years ago. I actually left my practice of law, joined the startup, and it didn't succeed, but I learned a lot in the process. So the lessons that we've learned from this are get good management, get good people around you in the right spots, and funding these vehicles is a challenge too, correct?
Yes, finding funding is always a challenge, and getting the right backers is critical. I have been invested in one or two arrangements where the investors were a problem. So getting the right investors that share your vision, that you can work with, that will...
Who believe in you.
Who believe in it and will see the company through, that's critical.
I've seen situations where the investors aren't willing to stick with the original founders for whatever reason, because they want to monetize the technology faster or whatever. But I'm seeing a lot of money flowing from private equity into startup businesses at crazy valuations these days.
There's all sorts of investment going on, and because people have there's a lot of cash lying in bank accounts now, and people are looking for a way to put it to work.
Do you think that cash should be deployed into things that would be considered public investments or stocks today? In other words, where should people put their money?
I don't know the answer to that.
That's a good answer.
It's a question somebody smarter than I asked.
The concern that you and I have talked about privately, about what's happening in the economy, how do you think COVID has affected the way we live and operate?
It's almost impossible to predict what will happen from the changes that have been brought about by COVID, the changes in human behavior, the changes in the way people behave and look at the markets, the human interaction. It's a very different time, and I can't predict. It's certainly, I'm not a youngster, and it's certainly different than anything I've ever seen.
Where do you think we're headed from here?
Well, I personally think we have to be aware of extremely high inflation. I mean, a type of inflation that... Hyperinflation. And we're not immune from inflation like Venezuela or the Weimar Republic or France after World War II. We're not immune from that. And I think we've got to watch for that possibility.
How do you protect against something like that?
Well, hold assets that survive that type of thing would be what I'm trying to do. I'm certainly not going to get rid of things like land or
real estate is an important investment these days.
Yes, I think so.
Lew, if there's one piece of advice that you could give a young entrepreneur today as we end our interview, what would that be? And I'm talking with Lew Parker, who's the founder of Willowcroft Vineyards Winery in Loudoun County. And by the way, everybody, go visit this place. It's a beautiful, bucolic location located off of Route 7, and a lovely place to visit. But what piece of advice would you give an aspiring young entrepreneur who's trying to grow his or her business today?
Oh, certainly try to understand and predict the markets. And that's very, very challenging today because technology and markets are moving so quickly, much more quickly than I've ever seen in the past. Understanding the markets and potential markets for what you're going to provide to the markets is the most critical thing you need to do.
Lew Parker, thanks for your advice, and thanks for your friendship, and thanks for appearing on Blueprint for Wealth videocast today. Please join us next time for a special topic and a very special guest on Blueprint for Wealth.